group thought was the best way to go. So there's no right or wrong answers to any of them. That's a nice thing. There's no answers on the back of any of these cards. It's because any scenario, there's many that we could do. So let's go ahead and start with the first one, Sandy. At the beginning. Okay, there's one. So church is evacuating. We're not saying why. It might be a bomb threat. It might be a fire, whatever. Or it could be a very disruptive incident in one area of the sanctuary that we've moving people out. But how many churches have this problem? An elderly person with mobility issues. What are we going to do? You know, I would hope everybody in the congregation be willing to help, but we always have a medical emergency response team designee, which I would hope they would be kind of the focal point on that, of getting that person, getting them help. We've got wheelchairs at both entrances, so that if we need to wheel them out or whatever, and you know, ushers, of course, and everybody. You know, hopefully safety team wouldn't have to do that part of it, but might task someone, point at them, let's get this done. So, next one. Any comments on that one from anybody?
You know, I'm Pete Acevedo, and I'm with Woodland Park Community Church, and it's really important that you designate, or you have somebody on your team that knows where everything is at, that knows where the wheelchair is at, that knows where the first aid supplies are at, so that when these issues come up, and they will come up, more than an active shooter, I believe, medicals are going to come up more than somebody falls in the parking lot. With the recent snowstorm that we just had right now, it was really important that everybody on our team knew where all the medical supplies were at. And then you designate somebody to dial 911. You know, you tell somebody on your team, dial 911, go and dial, pick up the phone, if in fact you do need to have medical personnel right there right away. And because if you don't do that, then it's everybody's looking for a wheelchair, or everybody's looking for a walker, or a...
You know, and as I say, on something like this, our medical emergency response person
right.
would be the point person.
Right.
And either they do it or they grab someone.
Even if you don't have a designated
Yep.
medical person,
Yep.
at least know that, okay, who on your team can you radio to
Yep.
get to those supplies right away?
Yep.
So yeah, good.
So next one, a person not known to you is walking around taking pictures inside your church. This could be on a Sunday, or we have activities going all week long here. And there was an incident at one of the other churches recently of someone taking pictures inside the window and everything. And so it did bring a lot for us to think about. But the biggest thing is we have a policy of no pictures taken unless you have the permission of either me or the pastor. Just a blanket policy on that. You know, if do we have we do not have a sign. No, we don't have a policy thing. And I think we probably need to do a little card for that, because as time goes, as we've developed our safety team, we've come up with a little policy and a sticker on the door: no open weapons, no tactical bags, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's another one is, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to actually put a posting on it, but the biggest thing is yeah, you're very welcome to our church, but without talking to the pastor of why you want to take these pictures, or talking to me, we're just, please don't be doing that. So biggest thing is, through the week, if somebody notices someone doing that, to let me know right away. I mean, so that I can assess.
We had a scenario come up where a guy came out of youth night.
Will you be on a mic so we can hear you for taping? Okay. Okay. Okay.
One of the things that's important too is that the staff at the church understand some of these basics. We had an incident at our church where the choir or the music team was practicing. Well, there's nobody else in the church. And I found out that Sunday that there was a guy that wanted to come into the church because he had never seen a church before. He was Middle Eastern, about 18 years of age. And they let him in, and he started taking pictures of different things throughout, the church. Even took a couple of selfies with some of the people. Well, this is the type of stuff security is looking for. Somebody that is coming in, looking for information, trying to get information possibly. So I think it's important that we make sure that our staff and people that are here at the church, when we may not be at the church, kind of understand the basics when it comes to, I'll just call it profiling.
Yeah.
And just being careful, First of all, they shouldn't have let him in to the church to begin with. They should have politely said, hey, if you'll come back at such and such time and have somebody there that could meet the guy, talk to him, be it the pastor, be it me. But if they don't know this stuff, we end up finding out about it afterwards, So
Really enjoyed when you shared that incident, because talking with the pastor and, and the rest of our safety team and staff here is like, well, it sent off big bells in everybody's head, it's like just very graciously just say, well, if you would come during normal business hours, come to the church office and just letting all of the but you're right. We have so many groups throughout the week to know that, no, you're not letting them in. If they want to do this, they can go to the office during office hours. But it did spark a really good conversation for us to think about. Sometimes it's usually after action that you really think about it. Barb?
Is there some reason why the congregation isn't aware of some of these rules? Because when this came up, we both said, we never heard that before.
Well, it was communicated to quite a few, but then again, trainings like this, workshops like this is a lot. I mean, it's hard to get out word to every single person in the church or take the first half hour of the Sunday morning service. I'd be doing that all the time. But we do emails a lot. But
Could it be something in writing that the church can look at their leisure?
Definitely.
And, for the most part, let's say we have Bible study, in our church certain times. We normally have somebody that's leading that up. In my opinion, that person is the one that really needs to know, just the basics, type stuff.
I did send that to the head of the choir, head of the bell choir, all the ones that lead groups in. I mean, that type of stuff, like Cyril said, you're not going to share with every single person, but the key leaders of each of those groups, it was communicated to. So, next slide, please. Just ponder on that one for a moment. Does everybody know what we do? Safety team, we know what we do, and ushers should know, but everybody in the church should know. If we're here during a service, we lock all four doors there. We got the little bar that we pull up, little black bar in it, and it locks it to where you can get out, but no one can get in unless they have a key. And we always have the outside doors locked already. But if we say lockdown, there's probably a really good reason. And to listen up, and if we tell you you're going to go towards the outside of the sanctuary so you're not seeing there, we'll drop the shades on the windows so there's limited visibility looking in here. So if it's other places in the building, we have the designated safe rooms, and they're labeled. All of them are the ones that have no windows on them. So you can go in there and lock it down. They can't get through. I'm working on getting pull-down shades for each one of they're just small windows, but at least that way, if you pull the shade, you can leave the lights on in there. I do have flashlights in each one, but yeah, it's not a suggestion when we say lockdown.
This is written for the safety team, right? Because I am assuming if you're hearing it on a radio, you're part of the safety team or somebody who has knowledge of that. My first response, if I heard that on a radio, and typically I'm not on a radio because I'm not necessarily out in the narthex, I'm inside the sanctuary, but if we hear that on the radio, I want to know, how do I convey this to the congregation? What's the scenario for who does that? You're hearing it out in the hallway. Somehow, I would assume whoever's in the hallway lets ushers know, because we'll pull all those things to lock doors. That's our job. But the congregation needs to know something. Where's that chain of communication?
And that's where the safety team would, because the ushers always sit right inside the door there. They're going to communicate that to you, whether they poke your head in the door real quick and just tell you lock down, and one of you come up and tell the pastor that it's a lockdown and let him announce to the congregation. I mean, he's already got their attention, so we don't need it coming from the back and everybody turning around and everything. We'll let him know, and then he can let everybody else know.
Who's in charge of letting him know? Somebody needs to be in charge so we know it's a valid thing. Somebody just didn't freak out.
Safety team will let the usher know, and an usher will let the pastor know.
Okay, that's a good
Yeah.
thing to know.
Yeah.
And has the pastor been trained on what will he say and what does he tell the congregation to do?
It depends on which
when
day.
they're all locked in.
Depends on which day what he's going to say. So,
Well, true.
I wish I could control have the little cards for him to say, this is how you put it, but as we know, that's a,
But we would
But
be,
we
assume
want
that whoever
controlled.
is up in front as, it could be a lay leader, it could be anybody, that then there's a message to the congregation.
Yeah.
And in a lockdown, what do people seated do? That's my concern of, I'm an usher, I kind of know what is supposed to happen. Do we duck and cover? What goes on? Everybody's sitting here freaked out
if
now.
it's as
'cause
severe
we're
as
locked
a
down.
lockdown, we've talked about before, is we lock them down, we pull the shades, and we move everybody to the outsides. Because unfortunately, there's no back door.
Well,
which-
Tim, you know what I'm going to say. We need to practice that with the congregation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've already talked to the pastor about doing a verbal walkthrough of like a fire, a fire drill, where to go, everything. So I've already talked to him about, I'm going to talk it through everybody, and then at the end of one of the services, we're actually going to, okay, we are doing a real fire drill, and have everybody actually know how to get people out of here and what direction to go. So, yes.
So there is a lot of discussion in churches across Colorado about this term, lockdown, because of the fact that a lot of our churches have what? Kids ministry, right? So you start locking stuff down, and you better make sure that the congregation knows what you're doing with your children in children's ministry. And where are you placing them as it relates to lockdown? And why are you doing that? And then you need to be bringing the conversation, law enforcement's got to be a part of this conversation, because what are they responding to? What are they coming to your location? Our location has a very large children's ministry, and ours has numerous classrooms that are ongoing. So you just can't lock down one part of this. You got to lock down, where the kids are at. You got to post somebody where the kids are at. And, at a church like Impact, that's big. The Nazarene Church. I mean, you got some issues that you're going to need more than just bringing in a congregation into the conversation. We need to start thinking bigger than that.
We have, during the services, we have a person monitoring the cameras and communicating with us.
Right.
We have separate radios for the children's ministry,
Right.
so that if I'm on duty and I tell, on the radio, I say lockdown, the camera person is going to let the children's ministry know, and the camera person is going to be one on 911 calling for law enforcement or whatever we need, if we need,
Ambulance, fire.
or what are the situation, is it a mental health crisis, so luckily we've got just those folks here today. What was your name again? I can't remember. Lewis. He's here for UPRAD. Tiny sent him. Tiny could have come, but he was like, I'm the one in the office. I want Boots, the guy that actually goes out there. So if we have questions on these, and if you have suggestions, please pipe up. And of course, we've got Teller County Sheriff's Department. So.
One more thing about the lockdown. You were kind of asking, how do we know, who's going to relay information?
Keep going. I'm going to turn them up.
Right. At our church, it will be extremely loud and aggressive. If we're going to a lockdown, something went terribly wrong, and so everyone's going to know. In our church, the head usher has a radio and also carries and is trained along with the team. The team is going to exit the sanctuary if the threat is outside of the sanctuary, okay? And that usher is the one that's going to be hollering and yelling, lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. And the congregation knows what to do during a lockdown. It doesn't matter what the scenario is or what's going on. If we go to lockdown, they all know, what to do. Similar to you guys, we move them to the front and get them down, trying to use chairs for helping to stop, incoming rounds and whatnot. And then we also turn the lights down. Same thing, visibility. Most of the time, if they don't see targets, they don't shoot. So get down, get quiet, and then let us deal with what's going on. But anyway, I didn't know how you guys dealt with it, but with us, it'll be very loud. Everybody will know right away what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah, it's not please. It's when we get a little coercive and bossy. Okay, next slide. Well, that's kind of flows into the same things. We were talking about a drill. We've got the audible and the visual alarms. Well, this is just saying fire suppression. That means everybody's going to take a shower. But if it's gone off, we're going to handle it the same way, is orderly getting people out of here. We're going to assume it went off for a reason. I mean, it could be a system malfunction, but we're going to go out just like a regular fire drill, and we're going to go out over into the fire lane over here. Luckily, we've got an arrangement with the Baptist church, if we really needed to, that we could evacuate into their church so that everybody's not. But the big thing is, not everybody run to their cars and try and start going home. because we've got one driveway coming in, and all those big trucks are gonna be coming up here, so, yep. Oh, she must have someone at the door or something, I don't know. We had an alarm a couple of weeks ago. It was a distress alarm that went in to dispatch. And the only reason I knew about it was someone was driving by and called me at home and said, you know, you got Woodland Park Police Department crawling all over your building? I know, great. So I got a hold of the alarm company, and they told me what it was, is a distress call. Well, the only thing we have is fire alarm. So anyway, once the officers got done and everything, one of them called me to let me know why they arrived and everything. So then I had to go back and forth with the alarm company on why did this happen. So then they had to send out a technician and test our whole system. It didn't come inside of our system. They're receiving, you know, there's stuff floating around in the air, signals all the time, and they get jumbled and everything, and somehow our account code they received on their receiving end in a distress. You know, my system is not able to do that, so it was on their system. But yeah, it kind of put us in a little tailspin there for a little bit. The only distress we have is one for our church secretary, and that's totally separate. That doesn't go through this fire alarm company or anything. So we knew it wasn't anything that. And the secretary was sitting next to me in my living room, so I know she hadn't activated anything. So
One thing that we started last year, and some of the bigger churches, it may be a bit of a problem, but we've got a rendezvous area, and when the ushers go around and they take count to see how many people are in the church that day, that information gets passed to the security team. So if we get everybody to the rendezvous area, we can actually do a quick head count and determine, do we have people still in the building or not?
yeah, we do that full count of total people in the building, and then we relay that up to our camera person that logs it, so that for just that thing is, if we have a fire alarm or whatever and get everybody out, we need to know, and to let first responders know that everybody's out. You know, everybody that we know of is out of the building.
We were the point of evacuation center for the recent fire, and the Red Cross was there, and it got to be around the time when our alarms normally set inside the church, but we had evacuees inside the church. And so I thought, well, that alarm's going to go off here shortly, and sure enough, the alarm goes off at 11:30. And so Woodland Park PD responds like they're supposed to respond, you know. I'm trying to get on the phone with Woodland Park PD to, hey, this is our evacuation center, everything's going to be good, but just know, you know, all of those things, like when your alarms are going to set, because you never know when your church might be used as an evacuation center.
Right.
And they're going to be there the whole time. So that was a new one for me, you know, just knowing that what the alarm codes were, you know, and they had reset the alarm code. So I was putting in the passcode for an old alarm system, and, you know, so, you know, use me as an example. And,
Yeah.
you know, but Woodland Park PD did the right thing. They responded to the alarm, and they were there promptly. But they knew that we also were being used as an evacuation center. So just have that written down somewhere, because, you know, your worst case scenario is that you're the point of contact, and each of us, as you can see, are really involved in our church security stuff, but you may not be there that week, or you may not be in, you know, you might be on vacation somewhere. And so, yeah, everybody looks to Tim here, and they look for me at Woodland Park, you know, Community Church, but, you know, and each one of us here is a designated person other than the uniform guys. But just know that, and that a lot of what Tim's talking about is who are the points of contact? Who can law enforcement look at if they have to come respond to a Woodland Park Community Church or Impact or the Nazarene Church or now Cripple Creek in the back there? You know, there's church members here that are responsible for things that happen. And so this alarm stuff, you don't think happens, but it does.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that was really an interesting, made me learn the alarm system a lot better, and,
yeah.
yeah, so, next.
And did we agree to be the gathering point for Merit if they have a big issue?
I got to coordinate with them yet. Yeah, Merit Security asked if we could be if they needed to evacuate, if they could bring their kids over here. So I got to get together with their safety lead, and I'm going to have them do just like we do all outside groups, sign a contract. This is our rules in our building, you know, if you're going to use it. But yeah, I mean, it's very convenient, 2 blocks away, that if they needed a place to act, to get the kids, that they could here. So yes. Luckily, we don't have this very often, but I imagine it could happen. You know, and this is either during a service or during the week. You know, you get a report of 2 vehicles collide out in a parking lot, and both drivers are loud and arguing. I'm going to let them sit out there and argue, and I'm going to give a little call to the local police department and let them deal with it. And I don't know if UPRAD would be involved in maybe talking them down and making things happier, but we're not going to do anything. We're going to sit on the cameras and watch them, and we're going to relay the information to the people that need to know it.
I think people are starting to use both driveways as exits and entrances, and maybe that needs to be clarified so that we don't have an accident. Which one is
Signs
the?
are really nice, but you know how many of the signs we have out there that people don't pay attention to? We got this big sign right over here. It says deliveries up the hill and to the office, and they delete things at this door, they leave things at that door, and it just, yeah, it's, even for like, we did a major thing on a weekend for Emmaus, and I put signs starting down at the driveway saying it was coming in, and directions to go all the way right up to that door, and sure enough, people just drive right by them and went the opposite way. So it's a nice thought, but that's only if people pay attention. So, next, please. There you go. You got shots fired, usher's been hit. Safety team is first one on the scene, and they see them bleeding heavily. Well, even though safety team is all trained in first aid and CPR, I'm not going to be administering first aid. Where's the gunman? I'm going to step right over the usher and go towards it and neutralize the threat if possible. Now, once everything's done and we know there's no more threat, then I can help stuff holes. But you know, the safety team, that's not our job. Do other churches feel that same way when it comes to?
I'd like to hear what the medic, what the medic would do, a little bit about what law enforcement's going to do when he does hear this call come out. What's going to happen?
Well, they're going to come blazing. You know, I mean, they're going to come in fully charged, right? And so hopefully we've got safety team person to greet them.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
that's all law enforcement. So, figure out what that's going to do.
Like Pete says, that, and what Tim mentioned. So we wouldn't do a whole lot. We would definitely be on standby for that. We would wait for the scene to be essentially cleared for us to even be able to come in. Law enforcement would essentially be the ones in here dealing with the gunman itself. And once that's been taken care of, or at least if they have him in a different spot, or if he's away from the usher that got shot, then we can kind of come in, maybe stop like the bleeding momentarily so we can drag them out maybe to the ambulance outside in the parking lot so we can get a better assessment, and then start treating from there. We would also be able to like provide some like counseling for, because it's a traumatic event, so that typically leaves people in like a weird headspace as well. But yeah, so like you said, Tim, the threat itself needs to be neutralized before we can actually come in and do anything. Do you guys agree?
You know, we're the first responders. You know, the safety team is, while we're waiting on everybody else, but if that threat's still there, we're going to be engaged until law enforcement gets there. And then we've got to do a smooth, and hopefully we don't get shot. And we've talked, our team has talked with the sheriff's department and police department. It's like, okay, you call them, they come on. If at all possible, we're not going to have a firearm drawn, because even if you got a sash with blinking lights on it, that's not what they're looking for. They saw that thing in my hand. So, but we're going to take care of everything we can. Safety team's going to try and neutralize the threat as soon as we can, and then everything gets handed over to outside. So
absolutely. I think the most important thing for you guys and anybody working at the church would be get yourself safe first. Especially when we get on scene, if anybody tries to engage a gunman, you're holding a weapon. We don't know who belongs where. So the most important thing, safest route to be, is leave that person there. Let us deal with it. Let us come in, make everything safe. And you guys lock down where you are. Get out of the building if you can. Let us handle it. When we come in, of course, we would go to the gunman first. Then we would render aid to any victims. But most important thing, just get yourself safe first. If you're able to intervene safely, of course do so, but keep in the back of your mind that us coming in, if you're holding a weapon in your hand and we come in, we could perceive you as the threat as well. So keep that in mind when, like you said, that you would try to engage, that we would come in and we have limited information. And then EMS would, of course, be on standby outside until we deem it safe for them to enter, and we'd be able to render aid until they would be able to come in and handle it.
So you notice the first response is, yeah, we are concerned about that person being shot on the floor, but we still got a gunman. And between safety team and law enforcement, that's because outside medical's not going to come in until that is stopped. So,
and unfortunately, in a mass casualty incident like this would be classified as, a little bit morbid, but the best scenario is the least amount of victims. So the faster that we can bypass that person that's hurt and prevent more casualties, the better. If we stop to handle that person first, and now that gunman is taking you as a victim, and then the next person that goes to help is a victim, the least amount of victims, the better. Especially once we get on scene, we can handle it immediately. We only have one person to address. So just make sure you're taking your own safety into account first before trying to render aid to anybody else.
How do you guys differentiate bad guy from the safety people?
What's that? Yeah, mostly, like he said, compliance, and just the amount of training that we receive, going through active shooter situations, mass casualty, knowing what to look for, people's body language, demeanor, the sorts of weapons. You know, if somebody's holding a rifle, it's very unlikely that they were carrying that as a concealed weapon for self-defense. So if we walked into a hallway and we received reports of a mass casualty incident with shots fired, and we walked into a hallway and somebody's holding a rifle, that's more than likely our person. Of course, we would have to perceive those facts as we get there, but it's probably safe to say that it's our person.
We'll also have bands on,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm sorry?
we'll
You guys will? And that's a good thing too, for the church to give out, maybe lanyards or T-shirts. I know you guys often wear anything with the logo of the church, or it says staff, something of that nature. That way we can easily identify somebody as more than likely a victim and somebody that needs to get out. Of course, we're going to treat everybody with a certain level of suspicion and try to be safe about it. Everybody's kind of a threat at that point, and we're going to make sure that everybody's unarmed. So if you see us come into the building and this happens, keep your hands where we can see them and just comply with us. If we tell you to face away, just face away, and we'll get you out.
It's the worst scenario for us is if we have something like that and it's still active when we got this person covered and we got our firearm drawn, at that point of being able to, here comes police department in here, and I'm standing here, and it's like, they don't know who the bad guy is, so that's a situation. Even if you got the sash on, they don't see that sash at that moment. So hopefully that's nothing that any of us ever have to deal with. But we have it enough in our minds know that we don't want to be the good Samaritan that gets taken out, because they don't know. So, next slide. Go ahead, Ann.
I took this to mean maybe I'm not on safety or medical team, and I go back to the bathroom and there's a shooter who shot someone. Well, he's taken off. How am I going to know what to do? As just a member of the congregation, now I am on safety team, I would have a plan. However, it calls for a lockdown. Somebody's got to say lockdown because everyone in here is in danger or in the children's rooms, or, but we met this person who's bleeding in the hallway. What do we do? I know you're trained to do what you're supposed to do. Safety team is trained, but I'm just a member of the congregation who went to the bathroom and all this is occurring and nobody knows about it yet. First of all, I'm hoping that our doors are secure enough that that's not happening, but you never know. So what happens in that scenario? You're already there, you're first on scene. I'm not gonna take care of that person because my life is in danger. I'm gonna try to hide, run, do all those things. I'm not fighting back with a gun. So it's awful.
Run, hide, fight, that's for the general members of the church. I mean, you're going to hide, you're going to run, get yourself to one of the safety rooms. Like if you're at the restrooms, well, we got all those lockdown rooms back there that you could slip inside, keep yourself safe. That's the number one thing. Pardon?
In this church, the cameras would pick up somebody in a room doing this.
Well, it depends on which room.
If they're in a room with no camera, that's a different thing.
Yeah, but
You open the door to have your Bible class and there's a person there and there's a guy standing there with a gun.
well, and that's why
I
we
don't
have,
like to think of these things, but I do.
and that's good. It's good to think these things through, though. But yeah, I mean, biggest thing is communication. But for general members of the congregation, for wherever your location is, hide. Get away from danger as much as you can, and wait for us to do our job so that the law enforcement can do theirs. So here's a little bit different. Elder man falls and hits his head while setting up in the service in here. Big thing is we don't ignore it. We get them up, we make sure we've got a lot of very talented people that can assess whether or not he needs outside medical attention. Rob?
In a church, when you capitalize his, that kind of changes the meaning.
Oops.
I wouldn't get him right up either.
I didn't catch that typo. Maybe that was a God moment to make us pay attention.
So James, the elderly man, we had a female that fell on Sunday morning. The female hit her head.
Yes.
And on the ice. So change the
Yeah, it could, inside, outside.
The service, because that pastor also does our children's stuff, so we had to get him incorporated to render aid to his wife, and, yeah, now he teaches that class and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, and we also have, even with something like this, for one, you determine, do they need to be transported? We need someone to come in. But also, even if it seems minor, we have a report form. So that anytime there's any incident, an incident report form, and the person that witnessed it fills it out best they can. Also, it's a good thing because we didn't start that until early this year, but the pastor's like, oh, I didn't hear about that happening. Well, the incident reports are kept in the pastor's office, so it goes across his desk, so he knows that this happened at his church. So, but yeah, we've had this a few times, and sometimes we've ended up, someone just took them to the hospital to get checked out or something. But, and also, sorry to say, but elderly hitting head is a lot differently than a 30-year-old person falling and hitting their head, even though they still can get hurt. But there's a little bit more room up there for things to move around, and you got to take it that much more seriously. So.
When you start throwing around the elderly word, us in EMS, we have a specific age group that comes with that, and it's typically like 55, 60 and above. Around that time, you've had enough time in your life to develop some illnesses, some chronic things. Anticoagulant medications is what we're really concerned about with those type of things. Maybe not get them up right away, just kind of walk up, make sure they're of right of mind, and kind of go from there. If they can't feel something, or if they say like neck, lower back, head, any of those hurt, just call us. Like it's our pleasure to come in, like check you guys out. But
The price is the same either way.
Yeah, exactly. But the big one is those anticoagulation medications, because like you mentioned, there's a lot more room in there for the elderly in your head, and the symptoms of an internal head bleed are pretty delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just give us a call. That's one of the things that we're known to do all the time, is just responding to a fall. We'd rather help you up than you potentially have something like life altering. Right.
Well, everybody's been sitting in here for a while. How about we get up and go have a bowl of chili? And then continue. That sound good?
snow removal team? Do some new music?
Well, it takes a whole team. It's not just what we do. The security team does. It's everything. Ushers, greeters, medical, snow removal. You know, you name the job that you have. It's totally a team effort. We couldn't, we actually couldn't do it. We had a security that we couldn't do it without all, everybody getting involved. Because I correspond with security teams all over the nation. So I see how important volunteerism is for everyone, not just the security, security team. Successful security team for everything else. That's something Steve, all of years that I've done security ministry.
Told Tim that if we had any non-weapon type incidents, that there's another guy in our congregation my height, but he's about 50 pounds heavier. And just the two of us together. Someone imposing force. We said we'd be happy to help you though.
We used to have a guy like that. He moved away. Unfortunately, he moved away. Mark. He was a big guy, and you would not want to mess with him.
I was telling about Eric Markworth and I offering to provide food for.
Yeah, the last time we did, we just did, just internally, the church did one of these. Yeah, we were discussing it, but, yeah. It's like, I stand on one side of that person, and Eric stands on the other. Probably we would shut him down pretty quick, you would hope.
Where are your congregation and know who they are.
Yeah.
You can just go sit on someone and hold them down for a while.
We have a guy on our team.
Eric and I together
He
probably know
teaches
600.
karate, Ken Vela. And you look at the guy and he's like, wow, God. He could really, if you wanted to, and you gotta know who those, you gotta know where they sit in the sanctuary, because you never know, you may have started out with a bunch of people on your security team, and pretty soon on that Sunday, you may have two. So you better know.
Yeah, well, that's, because we got such a small team, it's one of those, it's nice that we're a small church, and I know everybody so well.
I need a blanket, please. I drink all those cold drinks. Robert used to say, drink coffee. Drink coffee. That's why you're cold all the time. You drink those cold drinks. Thank you, Sharon. Well, I'm glad everything went well. How many of them came? How many were at Texas Roadhouse?
Oh, there, thank you, 8.
That's nice.
Yeah, we were there till 8 o'clock.
Were you? Did Kathy come? No, too far.
Not just that, she says her fatigue and pain isn't but she came to see me and my stuff.
Yes, that is good. So, what has Susie heard from the girls? Are they doing okay?
Left my tea in there. You gave me
Go get it.
Okay, guys, let's go. I hope so. Here they come. Go ahead.
That's a big no.
I saw this one, I just had to throw it in there.
Oh, no. Oh, no, no.
Big thing is, huh? Well, and recently in some of these crime watch things that we get, they had that incident, I think down in Texas, where one of the safety teams said, oh, there was someone out there and they shot at me and I returned fire, and I mean, just everything went crazy. The guy made everything up. It was one of those, he wanted attention to be the hero. He had a hero complex. You know, and a big discussion, because at first, you know, it looked like it was really something real. And then afterwards, after we got more information, it was the guy made everything up, and, you know, and then just discussion of who do you let on your safety team? You might want to vet them a little bit better. Is that next slide the picture, Sandy? Yeah, go ahead. No, that's not the picture. Yeah, that's what I put that one in. I probably would not invite him or let him be on someone with an attitude like that on my team. I mean, we've got to be shepherds, have a shepherd's heart first. We want to help in all aspects, not with an agenda and with a chip on our shoulder. And so, and if, yes, yes. And actually, starting with the new services next year, it's one recommended by our Church Mutual Insurance, and it's a lot less expensive. So all of our counters, everybody in finance gets a background check, everybody in our children's ministry, everybody on our safety team. So it made it, because I think before it was like $21 per background check, and this is like $5.75. And it, from what I see, it does just as well. So, but yeah, very vigorous on our background checks. Okay, go ahead, next slide. Of course, that guy kind of looks like Dan some days. Depends on the day he's had. Yeah. Okay, yeah, church member believes they found a suspicious item in the restroom. Well, good that they let you know. And yeah, so I would just cordon off that area, and I would do the quick look to see if it's worth calling in the cavalry or not. But you take it serious. I mean, we've had times that there was someone brought a bag in, and it was totally innocent. Early on in our in our safety team, it was on a Easter Sunday, and a guy that none of us knew, someone dropped him off at the door, came in with a tactical backpack, and came in and sat. And boy, we had eyes on him. I think Mike that was with us, I think he sat close by him to where he could watch him real well. But yeah, experience teaches us afterwards how to write policies and how to not allow things and take seriously, but we had another one, gentleman none of us knew, was very, very nervous, came in with this big bag, and the whole time in the service, he's looking around like this. Ends up, he was our district superintendent from our church conference. He was there that day to speak. But boy, all the safety team had eyes on him. Hindsight on that one, the pastor should have let us know that that person introduced us, but anyway. Do you guys have a bag policies in your churches? Yeah, we
don't have a written policy as it relates to bags. So,
yeah, we ended up formalizing it to where, you know, when the ushers or the greeters know that if they're coming in with a big bag, that
Yeah.
that's not a diaper bag or something.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know,
does Cripple Creek have anything in, do you guys know, and the interesting thing about Cripple Creek is that they share a bill,
right.
with someone else.
Well, another reason, and it can be just simple, telling a person, you know, a big bag sitting in the aisle is a egress problem. It is a trip hazard, you know, so, I mean, it might be totally innocent, but it's like, okay, if you just leave your bag over here by the entrance, you know, type thing. But, yeah, I mean, a big old bag like that sitting, well, if everybody's got to run out, but you don't know what's in the bag, so it's just, and I do know when I went to that church safety conference, they were saying if you let bags in, you have the right to check every bag, you know, and I mean, that kind of goes both ways. I know at one point we were like, well, we don't want us going through someone's bag, but everything I got from that, all the other safety teams around the country was, now, if you're allowing that bag in, you have the right to know what's in it. That Lakeside church shooting that happened in that big, down in Texas, they have a bag check station. Their safety guy was over here, and just at that moment, the gal at the bag check station was busy. Safety guy happened to be looking at his cell phone, and the person walked right by him. You know. You can't prevent everything. I mean, you can't be everything everywhere, but yeah. Next. Well, and then wasn't it the West Side Freeway down in Texas? The guy came in with a trench coat, a hat, a wig. I mean, about everything bizarre in the world that guy should have never made it in, but
today the thing with high schoolers, they like to wear hoodies.
yeah, everybody's wearing a hoodie. Yeah,
and they'll come in with a big, you know, hoodie, and it's that we had that situation last Sunday. Came in with a hoodie, sunglasses, you know,
well,
sat in the back of the church.
Well, as long as they don't mind that they're drawing our attention, and we'll let them know they've drawn our attention.
Day, but it does raise a concern to, you know, security when somebody comes in wearing all the garb.
Next.
Yeah.
The last question was, the guy entered your church, okay? You're probably too late at that point. Yeah, walks into the church wearing a long trench coat, so on, you know. We need to intercept these individuals outside where it's safer for the congregation, because if they're already inside your building,
Yeah,
you
we want to keep it
probably
out
dropped
there.
the ball, you know.
And we're fortunate enough that we have, you know, the camera system, and we have a person dedicated to watching so that they, you know, give us a little bit of heads up, or
Yeah.
one of us are running our little club cart transporting people, keeping an eye on things. But yeah, if we're going to stop a threat, well, what's the 75% of all major incidents happen in the parking lot.
Yep.
And that's where we want to keep them. Well, we would address them outside. Well, yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, one of the interesting ways they say is the power of hello. You engage them. And just through that conversation, if they have nefarious intentions, your radar picks it up pretty quick. Just starting that conversation with them and if they're a little bit nervous, I would delve deeper into why they're wearing that on that day. But yeah. Yeah, and actually our greeters do pretty good about that. If there's something that doesn't feel right, they notify one of us really quickly, and address it. Like I said, and having someone on cameras, so hopefully we can address it further from the doors, so.
on the backpack issue, we had a guy, it was his second Sunday. The first Sunday, I talked with him, and he's a prepper, building a bomb shelter. I think he's going to your church now. But the second Sunday, he shows up, and brings in a military type backpack, Well, I stop him, talk to him and say, hey, I need to see what you got inside your backpack. He was livid. He was mad. Started throwing all this national citizen or sovereign citizen stuff at me and so on. And, and I said, hey, you got a couple of options. You can take the backpack out, or I need to see what's in it. And I let him know, this is only your second Sunday. Give us an opportunity to get to know you before you start bringing backpacks and stuff like that in. Well, anyway, he threw it down on the floor, opened it up, and said, you don't touch anything. I'll show you, what's in there. He went through it, and, I mean, everything was good. Pardon me? Clothes, just some different things that he was carrying around. He rides around on a bike, on a three-wheel bike with flags. Yeah. So my guess is that he puts some of his things in the pack, which makes it easier to transport. But, as security, I've got to look after the congregation, and I don't know the guy, So the same thing would kind of happen with the trench coat, a handshake, hi, how you doing, try to get a feel for him. But the bottom line is, I'm going to see what's under that trench coat before I let him in.
Well, and we're just saying a stranger. It could be a member of your congregation has something going on in life. And I mean, we've seen in a lot of these reports inside jobs, and that's why one of the things we're doing is watching the congregation, because it doesn't mean that someone could have a mental issue and go off the rails. So.
We actually had that same guy come to our church, and one of our elders approached him, introduced himself, and said, oh, by the way, you look new to the church? Here, fill out this card, this interest card. And so after he got done filling out the interest card, we had his name, address, date of birth. I mean, we had everything on that interest card, and then we matched it up with the video when he came into the front door, and so we had a photograph of him, and so yeah, I know who he is.
Okay,
But he
next
never
one.
came back. He never came back the next Sunday, so I think I sent him to Cripple Creek, and he got tired of riding up the hill.
So this could be a bad snowstorm, or it could be anything, but, you know, we've got to make a decision at some point saying, okay, folks, stay put. It is not safe. I mean, don't have any authority, but
No.
I sure as heck is going to talk to them very strongly about waiting till it passes. Mother's Day this year, yeah, look at that. I mean, we did call off church that day, but we still had probably 30 people already in the church while that snowstorm was going on. And we just stayed put and helped each other dig out at the end. Next.
Yeah.
Well, well, this is congregation helping the congregation, you know, recognizing it, you know, and talking to them and seeing what's going on, and, you know, just being a friend. You know, we're a church, we're Christians, we love you, and we're concerned about you. You know, some people, I'm not going to mention any names, but have that a lot.
Is there EMS type stuff that we can look at as it relates to mental illness like that?
So specifically with UPRAD and my division, in the community paramedic position, we have, God, I wish I could tell you like off the top of my head how many, like a quantitative numerical number, but we have loads of resources for anyone just going through it. Anything mental related, anything, like even if just someone just needs someone to talk to, you know, we're pretty good at getting that done. We're pretty good about at least putting them in front of a counselor as well, if they do need that. We do a lot of crisis intervention as well, so, you know, everyone's like, it's someone's worst day, they're thinking about doing some pretty gnarly stuff, you can give us a call, we have the resources for it. And it could be as small as a conversation about, hey, you know, do you have means? Or it could be as, you know, I could transport someone to an in-person counselor if they're, you know, actively having thoughts of either harming themselves or others.
And I know where we were exposed to it is we had a gal that was involved in the fire, and she was really, really struggling. And so I know you guys were really instrumental. You guys got called in by Red Cross, and then
Yeah, so for that specific scenario, she never mentioned that she wanted to do anything, but just people around her noticed her acting weird and acting a little bit more stressed than, you know, your typical individual would have been. I mean, but, you know, granted, she thought her house was going to burn.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we showed up. Quick interview. She was nice enough to talk to us. Offered her all the resources in the world. Just essentially a shoulder and an ear, right? That's where it starts. And you know, if need be, if they do feel like they need to talk to someone, I could provide a counselor, you know, on the spot via like a telehealth session as well. Yeah, and that goes for anything medical. If someone's, you know, like, I mean, obviously, like for the obvious chest pain and like shortness of breath, you call 911. But if, you know, if someone's just feeling weak, unable to, you know, ambulate like they normally would, you can give us a call for that too. We do have the resources, and I mean, short of, like I was telling Martine earlier, short of imaging, we can do everything an ER does from wherever you're sitting, on your couch, in your living room, in the church, either or. Pete was nice enough to give us some private rooms to do some evaluations, and that was perfect for the patient. It was perfect for us. But no, it's, you know, being a community partner, we enjoy coming out. We enjoy, you know, intertwining with you guys, getting to know you guys, helping out where we can. And if you feel like someone's just having a bad day, give us a call. We're more than just 911.
That's great. Next. And this is, we have a Facebook page for the church and everything, and our website and everything, and I between Sandy and Marcy, I think they get to see actual input to those and everything. And if there is ever anything negative posted on there, please let me know ahead of time. You know, I mean, people have the right to protest. You got, you know, microphone over here.
This is a scenario that happened to my daughter's church in Kansas, not Kansas City, but the outskirts. And what they did is had kind of an event where people were, I don't know if they had food or what they had, but they met the group coming in and did the hello, how are you? They were so friendly, so nice that there were no altercations because they knew there could have been because they were coming to visit their church. And so they took a positive note with it and made everything good. And I don't believe they had any incidents. If they did, they took care of it in a different way. But it was kind of scary for that congregation. They were a large congregation, but they dealt with it because this was a group that had traveled to lots of churches and were going to maybe cause some dissent. Nobody really knew, but it worked out well. So it can happen anywhere. And it's the same, hello, how are you? Greet them, welcome them in a Christian manner. That's what you're all about. Kill them with kindness, yes.
Well, and the deal with protests, I mean, they have the right to protest, but you have the right to not let them on your property. If they can stay on public property, out on the sidewalk and scream and loud and do whatever they want and throw their signs, and as long as they're not impeding people coming and going, they have the right to do it. I mean, we're kind of fortunate that sidewalk's a long ways away from the church. You know, some of you guys are right up against, you know, so, I mean, we've got a little barrier there, but I mean, you know, basically our thought is, you know, if you're coming here to protest, go ahead, right out there. But if you're here, you're trespassing because I'm asking you to leave, so.
You line up all the snow equipment and all your ATVs and put them out there across the driveway and say, hey.
Put my snow blowers out there. That'll scare them off. Next slide. Oh, by the way, we started a little bit late and then we ate a little bit long. Is everybody good with going a little bit over past 1 o'clock? I mean, we don't want to go too much. Everybody's time's valuable. 85-year-old woman walks into a glass door at a church gathering and she's dazed and confused. This goes right back to the same thing, that elderly man falling. 85-year-old head. I mean, if this was a 6-year-old walks into a glass door, you'd rub it and send them on their way. But this, you're going to take much more precautions. Really have them sit, look at them for a while, watch their eyes, and see if we need to call professional help to look at them. It's not one to take lightly. Next. There we go. I love this one because it's out in the parking lot, and I'm going to keep it there. You know, here's the shots, and we're going to lock down here and call 911 and keep an eye on the cameras and let everybody know what's going on. There are shots going on in the parking lot. We're locked down until help arrives. And as long as it's down there, I'm not going to, unless I got to go protect one of my congregants that's out there, you know.
Is that pretty much an automatic lockdown situation?
Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, anything like that happens, you're going to lock down to where everybody's safe in here. Hopefully, for me, it's like, is this before church has started, so half the congregation is still out there, or is it during services? That's a whole different thing. I mean, during services, real easy, we just lock down. But if it's while people are coming in, well, that's where the more difficult part of being safety team is we've got to protect you out there too. So, thoughts, guys? Now, just we're gonna be, well, training with Jake Marcus. I mean, he was so good at, he set up one time all these different pictures out at the range of different people, and he says, you know, shots fired back there, and very first time doing it, you know, we're trying to look around and get a shot off from, you know, as far as the door, you know, and he finally got it through our heads. No, you run as close as you can to what's going on and neutralize it there, and it'd be the same thing out in the parking lot if our congregation was out there. So, hope it never happens, you know. Next. Does everybody have a first aid kit with Narcan?
If you don't, we have a vending machine set up at the library. I'm not sure if they filled it with the Narcan just yet, but once it's filled, it's available at no cost.
And you can get them from the fire department. You can, I mean, all of your first responder agencies have it available. So last year I got a grant through the state health department, so I can order as many as I want, and I ordered a whole case of them and distributed them out to other safety teams and then everywhere in our church. So we've got them.
How do you know it was fentanyl? If you're just not any medical, even if you have medical, how do you know unless you saw him take that glass that says fentanyl? I don't know.
So the best indication is if you check their eyes and the pupils are really, really tiny. And it's not going to guarantee fentanyl specifically, but it is going to really push you towards what's called an opiate, and fentanyl works for opiates.
And do the laws of Good Samaritan apply if he dies because wasn't fentanyl? And
It's all the training I've got on is, for one, you're not going to do them harm by giving them fentanyl. So if it's not that, I mean, by not giving Narcan, sorry, they already have fentanyl. But if it's not, yeah, it's a no harm, but you're also covered under Good Samaritan law on that. And it's not like you're injecting them with an EpiPen or something like that, and you can't give them too much. You know, so if one, you're not quite getting the reaction you think you should, give them another dose.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with those types of overdoses is obviously they die because they stop breathing. If you give them just single dose and they start breathing again, even if they're not all the way up completely, if they're breathing, they're alive.
But yeah, go ahead and administer and call 911.
Exactly.
But that first line of defense might very well save their life. And that's why it's getting so widespread everywhere in the community. So, just the world we live in, unfortunately. Next.
That's me again.
We did a disruptive person thing here, and Tiny came, and he acted out every one of these things. He's an amazing actor. And I mean, and our different safety teams, we had to go and address it and everything, and he, you know, gave us an after action, whether we did it right or wrong, but, you know, it's like, let him talk. He's agitated, okay, you know. You're not going to solve it for him. You know, maybe ask him if he wants to, you know, go for a walk and tell you all about it and everything. It would be nice if, you know, went away from there, but.
No, his mother told him he had to be here. I remember that
Yeah,
one.
no, that's right. Yeah, Tiny said the mother had told him he had to be here. His mother that had passed away recently, yeah. But, yeah, it's like, okay, well, I hear voices in my hearing aids. Or on, it's so funny because, like, on duty on Sundays, you know, I got my radio bud in my ear, and all of a sudden, you know, I get and talk to, and the person I'm looking at, all of a sudden I lose interest in them, and I'm like, give me a moment, I've got voices going off in my head here. They're
Now,
legitimate, though.
And Tim, not to interrupt, but us at UPRAD on the community medic side, we do have the power to establish a mental health hold, and it's ultimately just to get them transported essentially someone with more letters behind their name that's going to, decide if they're of right of mind or need to be, admitted somewhere. So for this specific patient, if we showed up and they didn't want to do an evaluation with us via our, telehealth, we would transport them against their will, essentially.
If you haven't had a chance to see these new vehicles they are wonderful. They're not, what make and model are they now?
So the one that I have currently, I think it's a 2024 Suburban. It's sweet. It's the newest one that we've gotten so far. But otherwise, the typical one's going to be a 4Runner. So middle of the snowstorm, you call us.
They
We're
have
coming.
everything in them. And they can medically test to see if the person has COVID or flu A, B, all these different things. And so that they know what they're dealing with, but it's a safe space to get them in until this incident boils over. But they really went through great pains to not make them look official like a police vehicle, because just that stigma itself causes, right? So, but yeah.
Yeah, but like I was telling Dan and Martine earlier, we have everything in those cars that an ambulance has, minus a mechanical ventilator and I think the IV drip. Otherwise, I have all my intubation stuff all my meds, all my my medical bags, my medical gear, on top of the extra lab value stuff that we can do for the home type stuff. Yeah, above all else, we're still paramedics first.
Makes me feel that much better about that tax referendum getting passed this year. Seriously, for you
absolutely.
guys to
I'm
get
sure.
what you need and hire the people you need. So, next, Sandy. Okay, medical people, what are we going to do? I would say they get them on the ground and keep everybody away and let them do their thing.
So typically ground, if they're not too spastic, I guess is a good word to use, where you can kind of turn their head. Obviously, just kind of hold their head loosely so they don't bump it against stuff, but sometimes they do bite their tongue, sometimes they do bleed, sometimes they do aspirate on their own saliva, so that's also a thing. And typically, once the seizure stops, you can kind of turn them off to the side so they can actually breathe and expel whatever
recovery
they got going on.
position.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we all learned that in first aid, CPR, recovery position. Get them on their side so they don't aspirate.
Yeah, some of these people have the history of seizures and they won't want to go to the hospital. Some people will be more than happy to go to the hospital, but this is also one of the things that we can do is if the person does have a history of seizures, takes all the medication appropriately, we can do one of those telehealth calls for them right there, get them seen right there on the spot if they don't want to go to the hospital. So while if they're actively seizing, with those tonic-clonic is what we call them, there's not much you're going to be able to do. It's once they stop and relax, that's when you can kind of turn them over. But yeah, for the most part, the tongue will just kind of fall off to the side. It goes. Yes.
Yeah, we had that happen at our house. A good friend of mine and his wife was there for dinner, and all of a sudden she spilled over onto the floor went into full seizures, and we just kind of kept to where it didn't get hurt. And there's not a lot you can do.
So Tim, I was at a conference once and talking to this guy I knew reasonably well, but not real well. And all of a sudden he grabs me and said, "Come with me to my room." And I'm like, this is weird. But he said, "I'm about to have a seizure and I want to make sure I don't hurt myself." So he knew that he was susceptible to these and he could see he had the aura. I think it turned out he didn't actually have one that time, but
Yeah. Well, it's good though that
he just grabbed somebody he thought could, keep him from hurting himself.
awesome. Yeah, we'll do a couple more. Sandy, go ahead.
wait.
Yeah.
I'm an usher, and this is going on. My medical team has taken care of it. Do you recommend, this could be the pastor's job, but moving the congregation to, if it's here or over there, so that, and I'm of the opinion, get people away from the situation so they can calm down, and then have them play a favorite song so that people can sing or whatever, or do it softly so that number one, we're protecting that person, but we're also getting the congregation to calm down because they're going to
That's a great time to have a song start.
Yes, but in
The
some
Spirit song
instances-
solves everything.
Yeah, move everybody forward, whatever.
Yeah,
Because they're
give
already
space.
disrupted, do it.
But, you know, whether it's a seizure or it's a heart attack or whatever, you know, give them space.
At our big church in Kansas City, it was not unusual for there to be some kind of a medical emergency when there's 2,000 people in the,
Right.
so anytime someone came in, there's some minor disturbance, but the pastor would always stop whatever he was doing, say a short prayer, and then, like you say, maybe have a song or something just to take up that space while, you kind of calm the activity in that area. They get that person taken out or whatever it is.
Yep.
He would always stop and do about a 1 or 2 minute prayer to kind of fill the space. And obviously praying for that person and their family.
But yeah, the congregation is still there for spiritual reasons and everything, and you're not going to change anything back there. But yeah, a good short prayer and sing a song and get things where they should be. Next. I don't know. Come on, medical people. What am I going to do? Putting you on the spot.
Where's their inhaler?
Yeah, hopefully they have an inhaler. You'd ask them if they have an inhaler. And
So the biggest thing you can do for someone having an asthma attack or something acute, they'll typically know, they'll typically have their inhaler. But if it's to the point where it's becoming an attack, quote unquote, they've already tried their inhaler a few times and it's not working. And that's obviously you call us. But before we get there, the best thing you can do for them is sit them up as high as possible. People have a tendency to kind of lean forward. It kind of starts closing off the structures. What you want to do is sit them up real nice and tall, helps them kind of open up the lungs. And then just kind of, some coaching, if you will.
I know a few members of our congregation that have big problems with perfumes. I don't know if it's quite that severe, but
We're
possible.
actually asked not to wear perfumes for choir and singing because there's always somebody, even people who think, oh, it's an essential oil, it's okay. No.
I was at an Air Force Tech School, and we would have to go out of the room, and they would break something in there, and then we'd have to come in and figure out what's wrong with the equipment. And we're walking out, and all of a sudden, God, they must have sprayed for bugs out here in the hallway. A female Air Force technician just ahead of me had just put perfume on. Boy, did I stick my foot in it. Sorry, it just smelled like bug spray to me. Let's do one more. You know, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm always straightening carpets, here at the church. But I do that in every store I go in. I'm watching, it's, I don't know, I can't help it. Of course, kind of always been that way, but it's like, I don't want it to be me. But anyway, we're dealing with this gal, and she feels hip pain. Well, don't have her move and call for the people that know what they're doing. Call 911.
That's exactly it.
I mean, hopefully it's just a bruised hip, but it's above my pay grade.
I think we still say that often it's not just that you fell, your hip actually broke first with people with osteoporosis especially, and then you fall. So
Yeah.
hold
So-
still.
But that dang carpet tile, that was not downright. I wouldn't sleep that night if it happened on my watch. Anyway, good place to wrap up for this time, guys. I like to do these like maybe once a year. And like I said, I've got 60 cards in each one of those categories, so we can mix up in all kinds of different things. And, and if you have suggestions, but I'm really glad that that you were able to come and the sheriff's department was able to come. I mean, some of those insights on some of those issues. So, yeah. Well, thanks, everybody.